Hey, and welcome to the Creative Coffee Break. Back on Friday, back live, and hopefully back on LinkedIn. So last week we had a bit of a technical glitch. Wasn't me, I promise. It wasn't me. And we didn't go out to LinkedIn. But that is why I'm also streaming to YouTube and to Facebook. So if you ever run into that problem or you want to hang out with me at some other place, that's what you have to do. So hopefully you are doing well. I'm super excited about this week's show because we're going to go into a little bit of a different direction where we're going to start talking about, designing our careers a little bit. And who am I? I always forget to introduce myself. My name is Werner Puchert and I'm a creative entrepreneur. And one of the things I want to ask you as I click through to my next scene is that I want you to please join my mailing list. I'm able to update everybody and tell them what's happening in the next show so I don't have to struggle against all the social media algorithms. Also, if you're keen to jump on that mailing list, I'm also going to be sharing with some folks because I've had some questions about how I do all these productions. I'm going to share some of the software and some of the hardware that I'm using so we can geek out about that. I'm drawing up a little list of things that you can actually jump into quite easily. One example of that is the software that I'm currently using, Ecamm Live. I'm also lucky to be on the beta testing for Ecamm. They recently did a huge update, so there's even more features and things like bringing guests in. You'll see that all happening as I go along, but definitely check them out. Great piece of software to get your live production. Because the other reason I'm mentioning this is that we are going into a world where we need to get used to this whole virtual thing and live streaming and all these things. And look at this dodgy South African doing it, right? If I can do it, you can do it too. Now, without further ado, because I tend to waffle on too much, is I'm super excited to introduce my friend Tammy Gooler. And Tammy is executive and career coach. Damn it, do I need some help? But this is not about me this time around. It's all about you. So Tammy is going to talk a little bit about that. She is on a mission to help people find fulfillment and the one word that I really enjoy, meaningful and satisfying careers. And she's also the author of an upcoming book. It's going to be launched in June. Can't wait to see that on the shelves. It's called, and I need to look at the title, it's Work from the Inside Out. And I don't want to destroy this because Tammy's going to slap me around. It's Work from the Inside Out, break through the obstacles and define your career, define a career that fulfills you. And I'm super excited about that. The other thing is also, if you talk to Tammy a little bit, she'll tell you that she's already working on her second book. But I mean, I'm sitting here talking too much. I want to bring Tammy on screen right now. Tammy, thanks for joining me on this live stream.
Werner.
I really appreciate it. Man, where's the microphone? You've moved it out of the screen, So, I mean,
Oh.
I think it's just, don't worry, the audio is perfect. But I also wanted to tell the audience that not only do we talk about careers, we probably spend most of our time geeking out about microphones and podcasting. So,
we do. We love our microphones.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
Oh, yeah. You see, that is it.
All right. There's my microphone. All right.
Tammy, I've totally destroyed your profile. Let's talk a little bit about you just for a second. Now, I mean, how do you become an executive career coach? And, if you can just give me a bit of a background. I mean, I didn't even mention where you're from.
Oh, I live in the Boston, Massachusetts area. I'm messing up the camera angle here.
Yeah, you see,
Sorry
Tammy's
about
gonna.
that.
Tammy, I'm also gonna help you. Look at this. I mean, I spoke about the production value.
Oh,
Look at that.
perfect.
Boom.
Thank you. There we go.
You saw that happening live right here.
Wow. And you're not even here with me. That's great. Thank you. All right. So, yeah, I live in the Boston, Massachusetts area. I'm originally from New York, though. I always like to give New York a shout out because I'm a proud born and raised in New York person, but I've lived in Boston for a long time now.
Boston. I mean, I always get this feeling, and I wanted to talk to you. I mean, let's not go into that direction, but I always like when I hear Boston, it sounds like an awesome place to live. Like, beautiful. Am I right?
It is. I think the quality of life here is wonderful. It's a small city compared to the metropolitan New York area. So it's very, very small. It's almost like a village compared to New York. But what I love about it is you have all the advantages of city living, and within maybe an hour's drive or less, You can be at the ocean and the beach. You can be in the mountains. You could be at a lake. You have everything here. And we have all the four seasons. We have the best of everything here. I love it. And we have a rich history here in the Boston area. So there's a really nice blend of, the older, old compared to Europe, we don't have anything old here, but
Yeah.
older architecture. When I go to Europe, I see, buildings that were built long before anything was built here, but it's there's a lot of heritage here. And yeah, I love it. I really do. I've lived
Awesome.
here a long time now.
And Tammy, how do you get into like this whole role of, because I think there's two elements, right? There is being able to look at people's careers and also being a coach to do that. So it's kind of a folded question, because I don't think I've ever asked you this. How did you get into career coaching?
Well, it's an excellent question. I spent many years in a number of different jobs and professions, and found myself probably growing a little unhappy in a few of those jobs. And I think I always was looking for something that I could be happy in. And during my college days, I actually worked in the career center at my college. It was part of my financial aid package. I had to, do some work study, they called it. And I enjoyed working in the career center. And I thought, and I also had a background in mental health work and counseling. And so I enjoyed talking to people about what their goals were and
Yeah.
what their aspirations were. And so when I found out about the field of coaching, not till I was about 38, 39 years old, I started to think about how could I kind of combine some of my interests. And I realized I really love talking to people about what they do for work and what their interests are and how do they spend the better part of their waking hours. And it just all came together at that point.
And now it's your job. And talking about that, I always find that one of some of the interesting things, and I wonder if it's like a coaching thing, is that there's this way that when we have conversations, and I've also heard you speaking to other people, that there's always this element of reframing the question. So, if I say to you, Tammy, I'm like super unhappy in my job, then you kind of have this tendency, I don't know if it's a Tammy thing, but then to flip it on its head. It's like maybe your job is unhappy with you, or, something like you. But is that kind of a coaching thing, like flipping these
Yes.
questions on their head and then making you think about it?
Well, it's actually a way of helping somebody kind of unpack their situations so that they can really see what is it that they might be really unhappy with. So for example, if somebody comes to me and says, "I'm really unhappy at work," I might ask them a few kind of open-ended questions. We call those powerful questions. And what we might find ourselves reframing is, "Oh, is it the work or is it your boss or the organizational culture?" So, the typical thing that how I explain reframing to people is the glass half empty or is it half full?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's always a reframe. But when you reframe things, it helps you to see things in a different way. So, are you unhappy at work or are you unhappy with your boss? Most people, when you ask them why they've left a job, it's usually because they're unhappy either with the culture of the workplace they're in or with the person that they are working under. They're not enjoying those work relationships. Uh, it's usually not the actual work itself. So, and there's lots of research that
And
points that out.
and that's super interesting, right? Because like I think in both instances you can't really, I mean, probably the culture element, you can do a little bit of research on that beforehand, but as much as we always feel like we get vetted by a organization to get hired, we actually need to do the reverse as well, right? And try and find out who are the people we're going to be working with, what's the culture of this place.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I do a lot of work with my clients on that. And I actually think that more often than not, when you're looking for a job, you're really trying to hire yourself an employer, because you could be somebody who has great expertise and skill in a particular industry or a particular type of work. But if you don't find yourself finding that job in the right organization where you're going to feel like you fit in, it can kind of be a disaster. And most of us have had the experience of being in a job or in a workplace where we find ourselves having trouble getting up in the morning because we don't want to go to that place again. So I spend a good amount of time when I'm working with somebody on a job search, or when I'm working with somebody who's trying to further clarify or define what kind of work they want to do, what kind of workplace they want to be in, really getting clear about what is it that you want to step into every day? What do you want your work day to look like? Do you want to be in a job where you're sitting at a desk? Do you want to work with a team? Do you want to work more independently? There are lots of ways to get at that information to find out what is the work culture like. Um, we work a lot on, networking, talking to people who have either worked in the company in the past, who are working there now. There are a lot of websites now where you can get information about what the culture is, what the mission and the vision and the values are of a particular company. Some of that is stuff that you can find on a company's website, and some of it may or may not be true. There are lots of lists out there. For example, the 100 best places to work lists that
Yeah.
are put in a lot of newspapers. Those lists I actually take with a big, huge grain of salt, because those lists are often self-nominated by the companies themselves. And so they apply for those lists and they are trying to put themselves in the best light. A lot of them are very good companies, but I've seen people go work for those companies and walk away and say, I'm not sure that is one of the best
Yeah.
places to
It's
work.
like the world we live in now. You have to check everything. There's a whole lot of alternative facts flowing around. You have to just vet
Yeah.
them. And but before
Yeah.
we get, because we've got a few things to do. Like, you've got a very cool framework that you
Yes.
want to share. We want to
Yeah.
quickly look at two profiles that we got, that we're going to go and sneak around people's LinkedIn. But before I do that,
Yeah.
I just wanted to give you an opportunity, because I'm excited about the book. I mean, you're on this mission for people to go find fulfillment, and the book is going to come out in June. Don't you want to just touch on a few themes before we talk about the second book, of course, the book that's coming out now?
Yeah.
A few themes of what we can expect in June from your book.
Thanks for asking about that, Werner. I really appreciate it. So the book uh, is based on a lot of the stories and themes that have come about from my podcast, Work from the Inside Out, which is also the name of the book. So I have spent the last 2.5 years talking to well over 100 people, and I've spent the last 20 years talking to lots of clients, all of whom have been trying to find greater meaning, satisfaction, and fulfillment in their careers. And I chose approximately 9 themes that have come through, and those are organized in the chapters of the book. Those themes are things that seem to come through all the time, that are kind of the obstacles that get in the way, oftentimes, of people finding work that is more fulfilling for them. So, for example, one of the chapters in the book is all about age. So I call that chapter It's Never Too Late. And then I talk a lot about what are some of the things that get in the way of people feeling like, oh, I'm too old to make a career change at this point, or a job change. And then I tell the stories of several people who made significant career and job changes in their 40s and 50s. Um, Another chapter in the book is all about how we define success for ourselves, because I think some people get stuck in a mindset about what they think success has to look like. And I tell the stories of a couple of people who found their own pathways to success and their own sense of satisfaction and their own success. It's not to say that I'm telling everybody they have to have the same definition of success, but I think that it's very important to have a framework for thinking about what you would define as success for yourself. And I'm hoping that the stories in the book will inspire people to think through how they might define success for themselves. And so at the end of each chapter in the book, there are some guiding questions and some suggested activities of things that people can do to help themselves get a little unstuck or to jog their thinking, and to do some self-reflection and possibly move through whatever obstacles are getting in the way of them moving towards a more meaningful or more satisfying career path. So the chapters, again, are all the typical kinds of things that people usually find are getting in the way of their own sort of happiness, really.
And
So
that's important,
that's
right?
really what the book addresses. I think it's very important. I feel very strongly about it.
Yeah,
Very
and
strongly.
it's like I see one of the comments that came in here. I just want to see if I can drag it on screen here. It's like a classic thing from Andre Nall. You can do nothing if a new CEO comes in and starts changing the culture that does not fit with you. This happens a lot with new norm and of constant restructuring. So,
Yep.
and that brings me to a comment that I want to is that I think sometimes what happens, and I put it in the description when I invited you, is that sometimes we wait too long to actually start working in our careers. It needs to be a constant thing that needs to continue happening, and you have to nurture it. Correct? Right?
I totally agree with that. It doesn't mean that, every day you go to work, you're thinking, oh, what else can I do? Where can I move to? You want to enjoy the moment that you're in on the job. But at the same time, I think that it's important to always be thinking about what can I learn that's new? How can I grow? How can I adapt or be agile or flexible with the changes that I know are going to occur. We all know that change is the only constant, and yet people are often somehow shocked and surprised when changes occur because sometimes they are surprising. But it's true, the comment that just came in about new leadership that comes in, and that can change the entire culture of an organization. And sometimes that means it's time to move along, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But if you haven't stayed in touch with your network, if you haven't, kept up with certain professional connections or even some personal connections along the way, it's going to be that much harder for you to move on because that network, those connections and those relationships are going to be instrumental in you being able to take some steps to move to the next place.
And I think that leads us to, if I don't misinterpret what we discussed before the show, to a nice framework that might be part of the second book, but you're here to reveal it to us. That might help you consider and understand how this is going to work, right? And if you don't
Yeah.
mind, I've got a few visuals that I'm going to control here. If you want to talk a little bit about this awesome framework that you have in your pocket.
Oh, this is exciting, Werner. Very exciting. So, yes, so I came up with a framework, and this is something, again, I'm pretty passionate about. I am declaring that I believe people need to be the CEO of their careers. And what I mean by that is that you need to be curious, engaged, and take full ownership of your career. The whole marketplace, the whole world has changed dramatically when it comes to employment and the world of work. If you think about it, even 10, 15, 20 years ago. Now, some people listening to this may not have been working back then. They may have still been children, but I was working back then. And I remember, people valued security, stability, employers that you felt could kind of watch over you, take care of you a little bit, provide you with a sense of security and stability. I know that, for example, my parents' generation or my grandparents' generation, they would stay in the same job for 30,
Yeah.
35 years, and then get a pension. Well, there are very few jobs now that provide that kind of security. Um, and not that the goal is always to look for something that just provides that kind of financial security, although for some people that is really their goal. I think that we still need to provide for ourselves a greater sense of who we are and where we want to go from day one when we start our careers, and to keep going on our own steam, so to speak. That's the ownership piece. Because as we've seen what's going on in the marketplace, people are getting laid off all the time. And this isn't just during COVID. This has happened for years and years and years now. It happens, mergers and acquisitions and all kinds of changes that are going on. And I see this, in terms of the clients that come to me. They come to me and they're feeling like the rug has been pulled out from under them, and they're not really sure what to do next. And they find themselves just going and applying for more jobs without a real sense of wonder or curiosity, or they've dropped half the people that they networked with to find the last job, and they're feeling a little shy or sheepish about reconnecting with some of those people. They're feeling badly that they got laid off. They're feeling, I've seen people who might have been in the same job for, let's say, 15, 20 years, even 10 years. And within the first week of losing a job, they're already doubting their skills and doubting their
Yeah.
expertise and doubting their employability. And so I'm really trying to give people the mindset and the tools with this framework to really take charge no matter what happens. And I'm not trying to suggest that everybody has to be ready if the other shoe drops, that's what this is about. This is a proactive framework. It's not just about be ready if your company lays you off. This is about really having kind of a deeper sense of ownership of your career from day one. And so staying open and curious in terms of what's going on in the world beyond your day-to-day job, staying engaged with those relationships with all kinds of people. I mean, we have access to each other in ways we never did before, especially now, during this pandemic. I talk to people all over the world all the time,
It's
and it's
true.
it's actually so much fun. Um, and there are so many different ways that we can help each other out. And I think that's the other part of this. It's not just about thinking about, me, me, me. It's also about thinking about how we can help each other out. And I think the more that we take the focus off of ourselves in some ways, the more engaged we will actually be, and the more engaged other people will be with us. I know I'm talking in kind of broad brushstrokes about this, but this actually goes back to Dale Carnegie said, "Be interested, not interesting."
Yeah.
And the more you show an interest in other people, you will learn more. The more you know, the more you have to go out there with. So it really makes a big difference in terms of how you will go forward, in terms of who you talk to, what what you can either bring into the workplace where you are now, or it might inform you in terms of what your next steps might be. And you get to take that all with you. That's part of the ownership piece. So being the CEO of your own career means you can go in any direction you choose to go, even if you have 5 children that you've got to take care of.
Yeah.
Whatever choices you're making, you can step out and do. Uh, I want to say you can do whatever you want to do. And I know there are some people who might push back against that if they feel that they have a lot of responsibilities on their plate. But what I mean by that is we all make choices, and we might at times have choices in front of us that don't feel like they're choices because maybe we don't like all the choices that are in front of us, but we still get to choose them. So there may be times in our lives where we are still owning those choices. We just may not always like all of them. But if we feel like we've made the choice, and maybe this is the reframe, if we feel like we've actually made the choice, there's a big difference in that kind of ownership of owning those choices than if we are giving the power over to someone else or some other entity and saying, oh, I didn't have a choice, they made me do it. No one can really make you do anything.
That's so true.
So that's how I feel about it. So when I hear someone say, oh, I didn't have a choice, I always say, oh, yes, you did have a choice. And you chose to give the power over to someone else. But understand this, that you made that choice. And they don't always like me for saying that. But I think that when we do that and we acknowledge that we made that choice, even if we didn't like it, that it gives us something that we didn't have before.
Yeah, it's
So
it's enriching to take a little bit of ownership of, like, even like you said, you know, if you make the choice and it's the wrong one, it's actually much better to take ownership of it and say, okay, cool, I made a mistake here. Or because I think I always feel, and you said it before, is like you can't really change, you know, the big ship. The only thing you can change is yourself, or you can work on yourself at least. And that, I mean, it might drive change later on, but that's the only thing you can really work on is yourself to start off with. I mean, that's helped me a lot.
well, and even in making mistakes, you learn from that. You know, I know it sounds kind of cliche. You know, we say, oh, you know, make mistakes, you learn from it, but you do. You do learn from your
Yeah.
mistakes. So really don't run around trying not to make mistakes. Learn from everything as you go forward.
Yeah.
You know, we all do. None of us is perfect. There's no such thing as perfection. So it don't aim for something that doesn't
And
exist.
it's
It's
such a
not
true
worth it.
thing that aligns even with my design world, because I have this conversation with a lot of clients, is that if you want to do innovation or try new things or implement diversity in your company, you need to take those first steps. And if you make a mistake, if
Yeah,
something screws up, the learning
yeah,
opportunity in that mistake is huge. Tammy, I've
right.
got a question related to the CEO framework, and this is from Jeff Parks. Being a
Yes.
CEO of your career is a great concept. Do you believe, like an entrepreneur for a company, one should have an exit strategy for your opportunities, for opportunities you accept?
Absolutely, Jeff. So one thing that I always say to people is you should always have a plan B. I even think in these days you should have a plan C. So what does that mean? So plan B is your backup plan, right? B for backup plan. Uh, I just
See
made
what you
that
did
up.
there, right?
Uh, but yes, you should absolutely have an exit plan, but not in the way of saying, oh, you know, I'm always going to have my mind, you know, part way, you know, out the door. But I think that you should always have your bases covered. You know, the world is unpredictable and uncertain, and we've learned that, you know, let's say twofold in the last year. It always was it always was uncertain. Um, but it, you know, I think it just sort of hit us in the face in the last year even more so. So yes, have a plan B so that you know, trust yourself. This is part of the ownership piece too. That you know that if something happens, you're in a new role or in a new situation, you know how you're going to be able to take care of yourself. So for some people, a plan B might be as straightforward as having 6 months worth of living expenses in their bank
Yeah.
account, knowing that if something happens, they know they can live for 6 months and they can either start looking for something else or have some other plan. A plan C might be, you know, something a little more extreme from that. Maybe they would think about other people they might have to involve in their plan, or other options that maybe are a little less attractive, but that would probably be something that is more of a stretch. But I think a plan B could be something that's you could put into action very quickly. A plan
Yeah,
C might be something a little more far-fetched. Hope that
makes
answers it,
sense.
Jeff.
And then, Tammy, here's a question because I also asked a few people to send me some questions so that I can sound very
Oh,
important, but I have to also give them some credit. And one that I received, and this is actually something that I also struggle with a little bit, is that are there similarities in career aspirations between someone just starting out and those who are looking for new challenges after many years? Because I am now in the position, I don't know if you also identify with this, is that I'm starting to become very nervous about my date of birth being on my LinkedIn profile. So for
ah,
me, looking for a career is completely different for someone starting out. Is there similarities?
yeah.
What is the deal?
Well, stop me if I'm not answering your question. So, are you asking a question about age? Is this really a question about age?
Yeah, and yeah. So
So,
yeah, like what is the
okay,
difference between
so
older people looking for a move in a career and maybe and the youngsters out there?
so look, first and foremost, there is ageism out there. I don't like it, but it's out there. I think it's out there more in certain industries or certain fields more than others. However, I think another thing I would say is don't put your birth date on your LinkedIn profile. In fact, nobody should be listing their date of birth with a year on their Facebook or LinkedIn profile. It's just that's just a security issue. So, and I see all the time where people have their age listed somewhere. And that's not a vanity thing. That's a safety thing. So if you have your date of birth somewhere, I mean, your date of birth is fine. Just get rid of the year you were born, because nothing wrong with everybody wishing you a happy birthday. At
Yeah,
least I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Some people would even disagree with that, but I think happy birthdays are nice. Um, However, when it comes to age, if you're just starting out, you have a lot to learn, and you really need to be open to a variety of possibilities and be willing to try just about anything. I've seen that there's a lot of what I would say are kids or young people who are starting out who, especially once they get their initial, let's say, bachelor's degree, and they think they're ready for management roles. And I would say take a little bit of a step back and just get your feet in the door somewhere and get some experience. Now, maybe you already have some experience, but I think there are some kids out there who think that they're a little further advanced than they are. But then when we're talking about the age, when you're worried about your age, and I've heard people who are worried about their age when there really shouldn't be. I would say people who are starting to, let's say, have 20 plus years under their belt, they start to get worried about that. And there's a couple of things. One is don't turn it into a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're shooting yourself in the foot and you're emphasizing it. I also think, though, that a couple of things. One is you've got to put your best foot forward and convey your value. So what is it that you can contribute to an organization, or what is it that you have to offer potential clients? So depending on what kind of role you're in, are you a consultant? Are you self-employed? Are you an individual contributor, or an executive or a manager? Whatever role you're in, it's very, very important that you portray your own personal brand. What is the value that you offer? How well do you do it? Um, what kinds of results are you able to get? So you want to convey that. You may also not want to put every little job you've ever had going
oh
back
yeah,
to when you first graduated from school. Now, employers are going to see that you didn't include, let's say, the dates of graduation, and they're going to know that you're a little more seasoned. So what if they know that? If you are being considered for a role or want to be considered for a role and are worried about your age, and you're worried that people won't want to look at you because of your age, do you really want to work for those employers anyway?
That's a good point.
You know, I mean, do you really want to work for those employers who are going to judge you based on that or aren't going to want to hire you based on that? I certainly wouldn't want to. So the other thing I think that's vitally, vitally important anybody, for anybody, but especially important when you're concerned about how you're going to be seen. It all goes back to making those connections, talking to lots and lots of people, and finding out who's doing what out there, what's going on, having lots of individual conversations. I'm not talking about going to big networking events. I get tired of even using the word networking because it just, I don't know, it makes people uncomfortable. I think you just want to, again, you want to be interested, not interesting. Take the focus off of yourself. The more you just show an interest in other people and what they're up to, they will ask you about you, and you can tell them about you, and you can tell them what kinds of things you're looking for and what you're interested in doing, and what kinds of contributions you want to make. Don't make it all about you and how it's going to fit you in your life. It's more about what you're going to be able to give. That's really, really important.
Makes sense.
But, again, most people, 80-85%, find their next role through someone they know or someone they know who introduced them to somebody else. Sometimes it could be as far out as 4 or 5 degrees of separation out. And that's going to be your best bet, is through some kind of networking. And so to worry about being perceived as too old, the other perception is either you're too old, you're going to be too expensive to hire, you're not going to work effectively enough, or you can't keep up with technology. There's all kinds of perceptions. But again, you don't want to work for the people who are going to perceive you that way anyway. So just keep putting your best foot forward and tell people what you can do. And it can get discouraging. There's no doubt about it. And I think also, don't try to do this alone. Get involved with some there's some wonderful job seeker groups. I know there are here in the Boston area. Hire a career coach, get some support. I've worked with a lot of, let's say, senior level job seekers, and it can get discouraging. I'm not saying that it's easy, but I helped a woman 70 years old get a full-time job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can be done, right?
So it absolutely can be done. But again, this is about your mindset. You got to reframe things, and don't go looking for jobs in places where people don't want you anyway. Why would you want to go work for them?
Because one of the reasons I thought of like having you on this on this stream is that I recently screwed up a little bit, and a lot of the things that because I, as an entrepreneur, there's actually 2 questions in this too. My eyes still open for potential opportunities coming across my table. If it's really, I don't see myself as now, I never want to work for an employer again. But and I had a conversation with someone about a potential position, and I must say, hopefully no one else is, just you and me on the stream, because one thing I did is I think I was a bit blasé about this. It was a network kind of connection. I was connected by a friend, and I did a bit of research, what this is about, and I read the ad, and then I waited and I kind of got busy with other things, and I went into the conversation with this person, and I was completely not prepared. And actually through the conversation, at some point, I started realizing that, like you're saying, there needs to be an alignment to what I have to offer and what he needs. And at the end of the conversation, I walked away where I was talking and sharing things and ideas that was completely not what he required. And then what he actually required was what I was kind of doing for the last year of my life. So there was a complete misalignment. So it comes back to what you're saying is like, keep on chipping away, you know, and make sure that you understand what it is that people require from you, not what you try and force down their throats.
Right, definitely. Great point. And you can always learn, right, from those
I
mistakes,
did.
right? Number one. I think also what's important is when you know that you're going to be having a conversation with somebody who you know could be strategically in a good position to help you out, do your homework. Check their LinkedIn profile. It's okay if they know that you checked it. Do a little research on the internet, Google them, uh, see if there's been anything in the news about them recently or any other achievements they've accomplished, and let them know, you can comment on something they've accomplished, congratulate them. Sometimes another thing I've done when I'm trying to get someone's attention who I want to be in touch with, maybe somebody I don't know or don't know that well, um, I look to see what kinds of things they're posting and they're interested in, like, for example, on LinkedIn, if they're active on LinkedIn. So I'll look at their posts and then I'll like them, but I'll also comment on them.
Okay.
And I'll tag them in the comment. And that way they will see that I'm following what they're doing. And they'll see that I'm paying attention and they'll notice me. That has happened. And that has actually helped me to get a response from them when I then go and email them later.
Engage.
Engage. Yeah.
See, I listened to the framework. Great stuff. And
I
then,
knew you would.
and Tammy,
I knew you would.
so talking about networking, and I received a question from someone asking, and it didn't clearly say if it was LinkedIn or not, but I think we can make it broader, But the question is, like, for example, if you're an entrepreneur, is the quantity of people in your network or the quality of people important, or doesn't it really matter? So, for example, I tend to get sometimes LinkedIn requests and whatever, and sometimes I just accept them. And I'm starting to feel like if people want to connect with me, they need to at least leave a note and say why they want to connect. And I see that happening now as well. But should you be more picky about your connections, or is it just kind of let it go and go with it?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to take into account. If you have, well, I think you always have the right to decide who you're going to connect with, right? So if somebody invites you to connect with them and there's something about it that doesn't feel right, well, don't accept the connection request, right? But I accept connection requests from people I don't know all the time. But if the kind of work they're doing or something they're involved with interests me, I'll accept their connection request. I am more likely to accept a request from somebody who bothers to write me a note. However, I get a lot of notes from people that say a lot of the same things. And
Yeah,
so it starts to look like boilerplate stuff. It also starts to sound very insincere. And when I look at what kind of work they're doing, I see that they're really trying to engage me in some way to sell me their services. So those people I don't accept, because I know that if I do, the next thing that will happen is I will get a
a sales
message
pitch.
from them, right? A sales pitch. And I just don't need that. So for the most part, I only accept connection requests from people who I know are not trying to sell me something, because these friendly messages that I know are going to turn into a sales pitch the next time, it's just like I'm done with that. So that's the way I handle it. I think but again, if you have under 500 connections on LinkedIn, I would say get yourself over that 500 mark, because it does help with your visibility, I believe. So you do want to have over 500 connections. It would be great if you could have
Makes
even
sense.
more than that. I think I'm upwards of around 5,000 at this
Whoa,
point.
okay.
And yes, they're all my close personal colleagues and friends, of course.
Of course, of
So
course.
yes, and I have time to be in touch with them every,
And you say happy
every
birthday
month
to
or
each
so.
one of them
I
individually.
do. They all get a birthday card from me. So
I We're talking nonsense. Tammy, there's one thing I forgot to ask you, and it kind of
Yeah.
popped to mind when you were talking about leadership. And I think this is perhaps, maybe it's a bit of a curveball, so you can tell me to back off on this one. But some of the leaders that you're talking to, because I think it might be a bit early to answer this question, is that I think what has happened now with the pandemic is that there is a tendency that we are now, well, tendency is a broad term, but we are working remotely. I've also recently seen, I think it might have been Google who is actually trying to actually open offices and actually drag people back in. And some organizations are saying we're staying remote. And I started thinking
Mhm.
about how interesting it must be to be a leader in some of these organizations. And I'm not talking top end, people who are managing other people. What kind of challenges or changes do you think is going to start happening in leadership, especially if, let's say, executive comes to talk to you now about, managing teams, especially in this remote-driven world?
So, I think it's all over the map right now. People don't. This is one of those things where people really don't know what to do. So every company is taking a very different stance on this in terms of, it's like the remote teams of before were, remote mostly because it was geographic. Now they're all remote because of COVID,
Yeah,
which isn't really totally true, right? But it's got this whole layer of COVID over it. So now people are deciding whether to go back to the office or not. And there's also this feeling out there that a lot of people are saying that they are more productive working from home. There are companies out there that are saving, huge amounts of money, not paying rent on office space and have, terminated some of their leases on office space and are not asking people to
correct.
come back. Now that presents a whole nother set of problems, or I won't say problems, but challenges in terms of how do you build your team? How do you keep an organizational culture going? I mean, there are ways to do it, and people are working on that. It can vary so dramatically depending on the nature of the business, what kind of work you're doing, how interdependent are the relationships on the team. Even the word team takes on a different meaning depending on the nature of the business that you're in and the work you're doing. So there's no one right answer to your question, but I think that some of the things that I'm pointing to here are some of the broad brushstrokes, some of the big
Yeah.
things that I'm hearing across the board from leaders that are trying to make these decisions in situations they've just never been in before. And they're also having to make these decisions based on, budgets, people have relocated. Some people,
Exactly. They've moved, right? Like,
have, yeah, they've moved, because they knew they weren't going to have to be back in the office for a year
yeah.
and a half. Um, so, there's just been so many different layers and levels of uncertainty. So, it's requiring leaders to exercise really a whole different kind of leadership. And some leaders, quite frankly, didn't really know how to be leaders in the first place.
So it's putting more pressure
You
on.
know?
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference between managing and leading, right? So
Yeah.
there's still a difference here now. How do you manage this and how do you lead through it? And I think there's a need for some really good coaching around this,
I happen to know one. I just saying. Um,
you know?
Tammy, it's time. It is time for us to do something that I'm super excited about, because the thing is, with live streaming, you have to involve people and you have to see what you can do. And we have two very kind people who actually said that they want you to have a look at their LinkedIn profiles. And of course, you said,
All right.
what is their objective? And let me see if I can get this
Yeah.
thing to work, because this is the other thing, is the South African trying to get his slides to work. Let me see if I can
The
get. Oh,
South
there it is.
African.
There it is. Technology to the rescue. So the first person that I would like to introduce you to is actually a good friend of mine, Lindsay Saperstein. I probably destroyed her surname there. She's
No, you did just fine. I don't know Lindsay, but I know how to say Saperstein.
So
It's not an
that's
unusual name coming from New York. So
yeah, she is. There's a little bit of a New Yorkie in her. I must say, she can get very angry at some stages, especially with me. So I wouldn't. So Lindsay is a. I mean, I think she's kind of at the start of a career. One of the objectives, because the one thing you also said to me that I think is important to note here is like, Vanna, when I look at these profiles, tell me what these people's objectives are. And that's probably also important to keep in mind when you look at a profile or create your LinkedIn profile, right?
absolutely. The first thing I ask somebody, because people ask me all the time to look, oh, thank you for blowing that up. Thank you very
Yeah, I'm
much.
also not able
That's
to see. I
okay.
need to get my glasses
Now,
still.
can you scroll it so that we can see the top? Yeah.
Yeah,
So so um so the first thing I ask people is what's their objective, when they say, can you can you look at my profile and tell me what it needs? It's like, well, I can tell you what it needs if I know what you're trying to accomplish with it. Are you looking
of
for a new
course.
job? What kind of job are you looking for? Do you know? Or do we not need to figure that out first? So that's always important. Um, and then there are some sort of basic rules of the road in terms of some broad brushstrokes and things that I think are important about anybody having a good LinkedIn profile. So, for example, with Lindsay's profile, she's got, and I usually just start from the top and I work my way down.
Okay. Just tell me if I need to
So
scroll, okay?
I will, believe me, I'll tell you what to do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy.
So, and you can tell me if we need to move along because I
No, no,
have
no.
no
There's
idea what
time.
time
I
it
mean,
is.
I'm just going with the flow. We have time, but I also cognizant of your time, of course, as well. But let's do the two profiles
Well,
and
I'm fine.
okay.
So I look at the top and I see that Lindsay has the generic background banner at the top that LinkedIn provides. So there's an opportunity here for Lindsay to include some kind of image behind her. It doesn't have to be an image that has anything to do with her professional background. And in fact, the thing that I don't know if people realize this about LinkedIn, but even though LinkedIn is not Facebook or personal, you can include a little bit of information about yourself that is somewhat personal in that there's an opportunity to show up as a human being
Of
on
course.
LinkedIn, even though LinkedIn is a really a business professional platform. Um, I suggest that people include, they can include a professional banner, or even if you have like a lovely photo of some type, let's say from a vacation you've been on, or just something that speaks to who you are or is a good conversation piece. Put that in that banner section. But the one thing you should definitely do is get rid of that generic background that LinkedIn gives you.
Got it.
So come up with something like that. And then also important here is Lindsay has, a pretty good photo of herself. It's always important to have a photo. I've seen some LinkedIn profiles where people have no photo. If you are looking for a job, you've got to have a decent photo. Um, that's a pretty good photo.
Yeah.
I think maybe a little more of a smile would be good. It looks kind of like I'm not sure what the expression is on your face, Lindsay. It
It
doesn't
looks like she's
quite.
dealing with me. This is her face when
Yeah.
she has to do a phone call with me. She's gonna kill me.
Well, better you than me.
Yeah.
Um, I think it would be maybe a little bit more of a smile would be good, but it is a nicely framed photo.
Yeah.
It's not a bad photo. I'm just giving you what I can offer. Now, um, underneath your name, this is something you've done really, really well, Lindsay, that a lot of people do not do well. you have included your areas of specialty. If these are the things you want to be found for. Now, this is what's really important about LinkedIn is a lot of people have underneath their name what LinkedIn defaults to, which is usually a job title in a workplace, like,
Correct.
VP of such and such at this company. So you've put all the sort of what look like sort of keywords or key search terms. So that area right underneath your name is called the headline.
Yeah.
And that area is very keyword sensitive for anybody trying to find. So anyone trying to find somebody with B2B or B2C marketing experience, virtual events, marketing, social media, campaign development, email marketing, all of those things. If they're looking for somebody with that experience, your profile may very likely come up because you've put those keywords in that area. So that's really great. Now, we go further to your geographic area, Brick, New Jersey. I'm assuming that's where you live. If you are looking for employment and are thinking about, I don't know where Brick is. I know New Jersey, but I don't know where Brick is. So if that happens to be, let's say, in the metropolitan New York area, and you are thinking that you would like to be available to work, let's say in the greater New York City area, I suggest that people put New York City or metropolitan New York area
Okay.
rather than their hometown, because I think it will, when people do a search, if they filter it by geographic area, Brick, New Jersey may not come up and your profile might not come
Can be
up.
very
So
narrow, right? It knocks her out of the search.
it might,
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I think that probably that might be helpful. You've got your 500 plus connections, which is great. So let's keep scrolling down. Okay, let's look at the about section. So the about section is a little bit on the thin side. It's one sentence. So you have a grand opportunity here in the about section to write a really nice summary about who you are in the marketplace. This is the kind of thing that can also be at the top of your resume as a summary. Now, at the top of the resume, it's only going to be maybe 3 to 4 sentences. But in LinkedIn, you can actually put a lot more. And it's just a really nice opportunity to really say, who are you? A lot of people will put what they've done.
Yeah.
I've done this, I've done that, um, so here you've got 10 plus years of experience in the media industry. That's great. Driving the development, communication. So those are things you've done. I would want to know, Lindsay, when people work with you, what would they say their experience is of working with you? Or what kind of impact have you had? What kinds of results do you get? What kinds of problems do you like to solve? What's a good metaphor for who you are in the workplace? So, in other words, and again, I'm making some assumptions here, not knowing exactly what your goal is, but um, when people hire someone, whether you're being hired for a job or you're being hired as a consultant or as an entrepreneur, they're not just hiring you because you have certain experiences or certain skills. They're also hiring you as a person.
Correct.
There's that whole, what the word that's often used is likability, which sounds a little too, personal, but the notion is they're hiring you because they feel like they're going to be able to work with you. So I often suggest that people try to find a good metaphor that fits who they are, because that's something people will remember if they remember anything about you. So I'll give you an example. Uh, uh, I had a client who was really, really organized and was going after sort of office management roles. And we came up with well, we didn't really come up with this. It's a metaphor that already exists, but we put it in her summary section that said, that she's known for bringing order out of chaos. Well, when she went in for an interview, the interviewer immediately said, "Hey, I really like this order out of chaos thing," because they've talked to a million people who know how to, work certain systems and organizational things, but not everybody can say, "I can bring order out of chaos." So, it's always good if, thinking about people who have worked with you have thanked you for what? What do people generally thank you for? Is it something about you as a person? Is it something about you that you do really well? I have another client who is very thorough in the way she asks questions. And so she's had a lot of people say, "You're always poking holes in things. You're always poking holes in everything." So I had her put in her resume, I'm the person who's always poking holes in things, making sure that we've got all
Oh,
our
that's
bases
cool.
covered, you know. And so that's the kind of thing that distinguishes you from all the other people who also have, the ability to communicate and execute marketing strategy. Because, there's a lot of highly educated, highly skilled people out there. So how are you going to stand out? And what kinds of problems can you solve and how well can you do them? And are there any metrics you can attach to those things? And so you want to give people a really good view of that in that about section. Now, some of that you can also put further down. We can go further down now a little
Okay.
bit. So looking at your activity for a moment, actually. So go back up a little bit. So,
There you go.
so your
Yep.
activity. Okay, so you've got 806 followers, which probably means you've got 806 contacts. So that's good. You can always add to that. And so I see here, for example, that we see that you've commented on some posts, which is great, and something that you shared. So when we talk about activity, there's different kinds of activity that you can have on LinkedIn. It's really important that you are active on LinkedIn at least once or twice a week, maybe more if you can be. When I say be active, that doesn't mean that you just look at a post and like it. Liking a post is not active. It's not an activity. What an activity is, for example, let's say someone posts something that you really like. Well, then go ahead and make a comment on it and make sure that you tag the person whose post you just commented
Comment
on,
on.
and they might respond to you. That's going to trigger the algorithm a little bit to bring you further up. Or make your own post or write an article. An article can be as simple as, when I say write an article, it could be as simple as a paragraph, like a blog post, but you don't post it as a post, you post it as an article on LinkedIn. You can look all these things up very simply in
Yeah.
LinkedIn,
And it's
but
interesting.
there's all kinds of ways. Go ahead.
I've noticed that people actually, because I also wondered about it, and I noticed that people actually pick up on it, because even here in the featured section, if you create content, so like when I post my little videos, I always put it there. And I've noticed that, maybe before a meeting, when I meet a friend or a client, they always pick up on what's happening in the feature and activity.
Mm-hmm.
That's a conversation starter or something that they.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to underline what you're saying. I think it's super important.
Yeah, it really helps to raise your profile. And once in a while I come across people who, like, for example, second degree connections of mine who I'm looking to find a connection to a particular company, or and then I see that my second degree connection is blocked out their entire network, so I can't see how I'm connected
Oh
to
yeah,
them. And I think, they're very protective of who they're connected to. And I'm thinking, but that's the whole point of LinkedIn, is to share connections and to network.
Great
So I'm
point. Yeah.
always a little irked when I see that somebody won't let me see how I'm connected to them. Um, and so I think, why are you here then? Why are you here on LinkedIn if you don't want me to see how we might be connected? I always wonder that.
Makes
I
sense.
don't know
Yeah.
why that is.
Yeah. I
And
think
I
there's,
see
yeah.
that people are very careful with their some I mean, when I teach some of these classes live, I hear people very, very concerned about their privacy. And it's like I say to them, look, if you're that concerned about your privacy, then don't get involved with social media because you can't be totally private on social media. The whole point of being on a platform like this is to be engaged. And if
Engage. Yeah.
you're kind of worried, if you're that worried about your privacy, then don't do it. The whole point of this is to get engaged with people, talk to them, and share information, and get involved with the world around you. So I don't know. I just don't think you can have it
No,
both ways.
exactly. I mean, I think there's a way that you can manage it, right? Because I mean, you can curate this, and you can, and like you said, you don't have to be there every day and online all the
Right,
time and spend
right,
every waking moment, but you can engage a little
right,
bit and let
right.
go. And but also, I think
Yeah,
the other thing is, Tammy, like you said in the beginning of our chat, is that it's like a, I don't believe I'm going to say this. It's like a bonsai. You have to take care of it. You have to trim it, look after it. Not that I know anything about plants, but because the thing that I do all the time is I always wake up when it's too late, and then I want to quickly fix everything, and then it becomes an overwhelming situation. Shouldn't do
yes.
that.
It's just like a bonsai. Yes. I'm going to
Exactly.
remember that,
Okay.
Werner.
Be the
Just like
bonsai.
a
Okay.
bonsai. There you
Yeah.
go. Um, Lindsay, with regard to your experience, I would take some content from your resume at the very least and fill in some of the content from your resume
Yeah.
underneath each of these positions, unless the case is that you're really looking to move out of marketing, which it doesn't look like it is. It looks like, based on what's in your headline, that you really are wanting to continue
She's a
to
marketer.
work in that arena. Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
like you want to continue in that arena. So I would say that you should put some of the highlights from your resume, because you really do want your resume and your LinkedIn to mirror one another fairly well. You do have more room in LinkedIn to expound on some things if you want to. But if you have some verbiage, whether it's in bullet form or however, but that should be filled in here.
Perfect.
Also, you can, with regard to your dates of employment, if you want to just put in the years, I think there's a way to do it and not have the months. But that's up to you. I just think that when you've had several years worth of experience, there's a point where, this is just my opinion. People have different opinions on this, but since I'm the one talking, I'll give you my opinion. I'm not a big fan of, if you've been out of school for at least several years, I'm a big fan of just putting the years down and not splitting hairs with the months,
The months.
because I
Yeah.
think it does make you look a little less experienced.
Makes sense.
But that's my opinion. Looks like you have some great experience, Lindsay.
Yeah, she's rocked and rolled.
Yeah.
Okay, education, and then the rest is all endorsements and
Right. And skills and endorsements are great. And let's see, you got recommendations, which is great. Get some, how many does she have? Let's see.
I think
Don't
there's
know if that's, I don't know if you've got
there's
more than that.
no, that's it.
Okay. So you've got one from Viacom. I would say try to have at least one from each job you've had if you can. You might not be able to get one, from like earlier years at this point. That's not worth it, but it doesn't hurt to have a few more. Um, Endorsements, some people think they're great. I think they're fine. They're okay. I think recruiters do look at them. Um, I think they do help the algorithm a little bit, but at first, when the endorsements were a big deal, I'm not sure uh, whether they were worth it, but I've been hearing over the last few years that people do think the endorsements are good. But I get endorsed for things from people I don't even know who endorse me for things that I really don't even do. So I don't know.
I think also what happens sometimes that's why I feel a bit dodgy is like I usually get requests for endorsements when I kind of know this person that I haven't spoken to in 10 years is intending to move it to a new job. And then I go,
Yeah.
can you quickly write me an
Yeah.
endorsement? And I think this is once again
Yeah.
something that you have to bonsai, right? You can't just at the last minute start trimming.
Well, there's a difference between the endorsements and the recommendations. So if you scroll up a slight bit, the endorsements are the things that are
you're right.
above. Those are just the little things you just click on those, right? That's just a quick click. The recommendations, you have to request someone do
Yeah.
it and they have to write it. And that's a whole different thing. So they're two very different things. The endorsements are different than the recommendations. I was talking about the endorsements for a minute, but the recommendations definitely are helpful.
It's Afrikaner. I've misunderstood there.
Now you got to stop that.
Okay, Tammy.
Especially because I think the world of you, Werner, and
I'm just fishing for compliments, you know.
Well, you just got one.
Thanks, Tammy. And then
all right, so we got your contact info. Oh, here's another important thing, Lindsay. No, it's right there. So Lindsay's profile. Do you see that URL?
Oh,
Lindsay,
yeah. 98776218.
Yeah. So Lindsay, there's a way and don't scroll up now, but you go to the top. You go to the top right-hand corner, I think, of your profile. And you'll see this in your own screen where there's a place where it says edit public profile. You click on it and you go in there and you get rid of the 9877621A. And you just have a nice clean LinkedIn URL. And then you take that LinkedIn URL, and if it is not already on your resume, make sure that it is.
Yeah.
I am shocked and surprised how often I look at people's resumes and I see that they've got their email, their phone number, their street address, which they definitely don't need on their resume. You do not need your street address. You don't even need Brick, New Jersey you could put New York City on your resume if you want. I mean, you could, Lindsay, not me. I would have to put Boston because I don't live in New York. But you clean that up and make sure it's on your resume.
I don't know if that's maybe a salary expectation in numbers. I don't know. But I think she needs to get rid of them.
Oh, well, then that might, yeah.
Lindsay.
Yeah. But I would probably put my salary expectations somewhere else then.
Yeah, for sure. Not in the URL.
Yeah.
Tammy, do you have time for one more?
For you, Werner, I do. I have time.
I'm just so glad you're not this is an old joke that I've done before, that you're not charging me consulting fees for this. And while I do the change, I want everybody to have quick look.
I'm not. I'm not charging for that. Who said I wasn't charging? I'm not.
Changing the topic. Loading up. And just for convenience, there's Tammy's podcast. Highly recommended. Some awesome guests on there. Dory Clark, for one. Haja was on, a good friend of ours, mutual friend.
Harsha, yeah.
There was even, I was on
Werner
there.
Puchert. Yes, Werner Puchert was on.
It was
Did I
awesome.
say your name right?
Yeah. Let's do this. And
yes,
the next
he was
one.
A great guest.
If I push the right button. Okay, there you go. Look at this. This is Naomi Love.
Naomi.
Yeah.
Naomi Love. All right. So as you can see, Naomi has a nice background up above with using her last name as an acronym, which is really cool.
That's brilliant. I mean, I can quickly show it because I'm controlling there you go. Look at that.
Yeah.
And then she's...
living optimistic vision every day. I love that. That's great.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. So now we have a great example of how someone uses that banner. We also have a great example of how somebody uses that headline area not as well.
Yeah, because Lindsay's got all the like kind of her target keywords in there, and Naomi's got her current position, if I remember correctly.
Right. Now, it's not to say that having program and events manager is a bad thing. We don't need Stanford University up there because, as you can see,
It's right
it's
there
up there
again.
twice. You don't need it up there twice. So, what I would have Naomi do is put underneath her name some really strong keywords for who she is professionally, how she wants to be. You think of it this way, ask yourself, what are the keywords of how I want to be found? Or if I'm doing a job search, what are the keywords I put in to find job postings? Although I'm not a fan of people spending a lot of time online looking at job postings anyway, because that's not the way most people find their jobs anyway. But if you were to do that, what are the keywords that you use? What are the job titles or sort of the general descriptors of your expertise or the functional roles that you fill? That is, your expertise and your functional expertise. Those are the things that should be underneath your name. Again, now Pinehurst, North Carolina. I've heard of Pinehurst, but I have a feeling that it's probably adjacent to another part of North Carolina that might be a little better known. And then we see that Naomi has 334 connections. So for someone who's working in the event space, I'd love to see her have 500 plus connections. So I would, and I do this with my clients who have less than 500. I challenge them, and I challenge them big on this. And I say, okay, so by next week, I want you to have another 50 connections on LinkedIn. And you think that you're like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? It's amazing how quickly you can add. Because I say, you know what? You can add your cousins, you can add your next door neighbor, you can add your friends. It doesn't have to be that everybody is a straight on, professional connection, because everybody is in your network. And you never know who's going to be that next person who knows the right person who can introduce you to someone else who's going to give you that next introduction to the right person who's going to connect you with a great organization or a great role or a great project. So don't assume that anybody can't do that for you, even if they don't work in your industry or your general area. As I always say, and I've heard other people say it, don't ever assume, because you know what happens when you assume.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. It's not a bonsai moment.
So highlights, we've got her connections, her mutual connections, probably with you, and then cook up virtual events. So that's something that she's interested in. And then let's see about, I love bringing people together through meetings and events, from listening to my employers. So this is very nice. So she's really bringing out who she is. It's a nice narrative, and it's okay that she has I statements about, I can contribute to an organization's overall success through meetings and events while enhancing a sense of community, invoking company pride, and strengthening brand. Over 20 plus years of experience, listening to my employers and clients' vision through the process of making that vision into a tangible reality every step of the way. Love is in the details. So this is great. I would probably even expand on this, or talk about things like, how long, like maybe no event is too small or too large, if that's true, to talk about like the scope or the scale of the kinds of events that you enjoy working on. So it's not just, I can do this, it's I enjoy doing this. And I always emphasize this with my clients is, we all talk about what we're capable of, and that's great, but it's also really important to talk about what you enjoy doing. People love hearing about what we enjoy. You know, if we only talk about what we're capable of, um, that doesn't speak to what we're really wanting to step into. And the example that I often will share with people is because we all have skills. We're all good at things. I'm good at cleaning toilets, but I don't want to do that for work.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't enjoy that, you know? So, it's you want to really talk about the things you enjoy. Me, I've enjoyed, you know, um, putting together, certain types of events. Are they professional events? Are they, personal types of, what kinds of meetings? What kinds of, really you could really expand on this about um, piece and really, both show people what you are capable of, but also the let them imagine really what you are able to produce.
Good point. Good point.
Yep.
And then if
Let's
we
see what else we got
go
here.
down, there's
All
a lot of
right.
experience
So
here.
she's done
Wow.
some comments, experience. There we go. So again, with the experience is great, but again, I would flesh things out a little bit more. Um, Great experience for sure, Naomi. I love, and I also think it's really cool that you have experience in a number of different, settings, that you've, now been working at a university, that you've also worked with, families, special forces, National
Wow.
Guard. It's great. And then really interesting with your licenses and certifications.
Yeah.
But flesh out those roles, those roles that you've had, whatever's on your resume, flesh that out a little
Yeah.
bit.
And I must
So
say,
this
I
is
think,
great.
and Tammy, because I wanted to comment, even at the top of Naomi's profile, they will have, because, for example, CED, a certified event designer. And I think what happens, and I'm also guilty of it sometimes, is we speak the language of our own industry or expertise. So, I start talking about design thinking or agile or whatever,
Mm,
and you go like, what is that? Because sometimes
mm,
the people who are going to employ us in the future don't understand the language of our
mhm.
expertise. So, I mean, like for Naomi's got a lot of like MPI. I mean, that's a huge organization and she's got certifications
Yeah,
and stuff there. That's actually super important, but
right.
it's not, you have to kind of convey that to people, right?
Yeah,
What it means.
right. Yeah, I mean, I have some letters after my name. Nobody knows what it is. They always ask me about it, though. So sometimes it can be a conversation starter, and sometimes it's just confusing.
Cool. And volunteering, that's
I
also
I
interesting,
love
right?
I love yeah, volunteering is great. That's the other thing that I love about what Naomi has here is there are things here that definitely show that she's got some other interests and other areas that she's involved with. And um, that's the beauty of LinkedIn is you are able to include things that maybe you didn't have room for on your resume or interests that round you out as a person. So I'll give a quick example. I had a client who was a securities attorney. So his work wasn't the most exciting in some ways. Maybe it was to him, but it was a little on the drier side. But he was the president of a choral society. He sang in a chorus and he had been the president. It was a very well-known choral society around here. And so I suggested that he post that as part of his activities. Um, on his LinkedIn because I thought, and then his banner was a picture of the choral society, and I thought that because when an employer is going to check him out, they're always going to look at your LinkedIn. It's going to just show, oh, there's a whole nother side to this
It's
person.
so cool. I'm going to
Yeah,
take that to
really
heart. That
good.
one is super interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we've got some really good skills and endorsements here. You always want to, you really do want to expand on your skills here. So I think that's the part when I was talking about endorsements before. I think it's probably more not about the actual endorsements themselves, but making sure that those those top 3 that show up on your profile here are the ones that you want to show up. And I
Okay.
think you can go in and make sure that a certain 3 are the ones that are going to show up immediately. I think you have some control over that. And so you want people to see which ones you want, you want to show up there.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay.
We
And then
got
she's got, I
nice
just want to, nice
recommendations.
recommendation. And there's a couple here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
now those are all from 2017. So if you can get any more recent, that would be great.
Yeah.
More accomplishments, it's excellent.
I don't know. Naomi is so accomplished. I need to show her more respect when I speak to her in the future.
Yeah, you do, Werner. I would, yeah. So now look at Naomi's profile. She's got it all trimmed up nice and
Yeah, it's
neat.
nicely.
Yep, make sure that that's on your resume, Naomi, if it is not already. And now she's added some of her interests, which I think also, adds to, what makes her interesting. And then she has causes that she cares about. So those are all, really nice things. It really rounds her out as a person, and we know a lot more about her.
Excellent. Tammy, I've dragged you into this live stream. I promised myself I'm going to stop doing this to my guests, but you guys are so interesting, and I always go over time. And I've got a producer in the background. He always says, "Vanna, don't keep the people so long." I just can't help it. I can't help it. And then
I don't mind being kept by you. I always love every time
it
we
was
talk.
really
So
cool, Tammy. And also just before we wrap this up, there's a few things I want to show, so we can just have a comment or at least say something about it. And the one is that you have a freebie that people can grab when they go to your website. So if you go to www.tammygoolerloop.com, 3 tips and 3 resources. If people jump into that, they can grab that. And I think you also have a mailing list, because I'm on your mailing list. Get something nice every week, so people can jump onto that.
Yep, every week I send out an email that describes the story that of my podcast guest.
Nice.
So some people actually just read my email and don't listen to the actual recording, but they at least get an idea of who my guest is and what their story is.
And then talking about the podcast, that's also available. TammyGoolerloop.com/podcast. And you can find it on any place where you're listening to podcasts. And then, Tammy, is there anywhere else where people can track you down, where it's important to find you? And
well, they can find me here on LinkedIn. So anybody who has watched this or listened in and would like to connect on LinkedIn, definitely invite me to connect on LinkedIn and send me a little note saying that you saw me on this broadcast. That would be very helpful. I'd love to connect with you.
That's awesome. And Tammy, I just want to say thank you once again for making the time to come hang out with me. And hopefully we'll connect again soon, because when I get to connect with you, it's always fun and also a learning experience. So I'm just going to quickly...
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to quickly shut this down so that people can have their Fridays and maybe some beer or whatever. But let me do this and say, please go check out Tammy's podcast. It's really interesting. Remember, it's all about changing the way you approach your career and finding fulfillment. And that's all. Everybody wants to do that, right? And then also what I want to ask you to do is, like I mentioned before, is jump into my mailing list, so that when I have people like Tammy on, at least I can contextualize it. I can tell you what's going to happen, and keep you up to date with what's happening with the Creative Coffee Break, because there's more to come. Believe me, I'm taking a break next week, because it's time to hang out with little Francie. He said I'm spending all my time Fridays talking to you, so I'm going to spend some time with him next week. But the following week, I'm having Dennis van Geelen. He's an innovation leader. He's also written a book about innovation, The Zero In Factor. So I'm excited to have another Canadian on the show. So don't judge me for that, but please stay in touch. Jump on the mailing list. or follow me on LinkedIn or on YouTube and see what is going to happen next. So once again, thank you for watching, and catch you in the next one.